Okay. I think my audio is supposed to work now. Let's just double check it real quick. Hi. Hi. Okay. So my audio's supposed to work. Um okay, so I'm not quite sure what you heard me say before, but probably nothing at all. That's cool. I will just do it again. It's alright because actually that way I am also going to be able to summarize it in a shorter way. Well, so this book I said is actually a really interesting one. I really like this book. It's called Woman and Power, and yeah, it like as I said before, it's like when I saw this book, I was like, oh, do you really want to go there? Because this is like really a feminist kind of book, right? So I was like, Selena, are you really gonna go there now? Like, are you gonna go into the feminist kind of literature? Because like, obviously I'm a feminist, but I just never wanted to be like a radical kind of feminist because I often play that role of the observer anyways. But then I saw this book, and yes, I liked the book cover, and everything was about inviting about this book. And after all, not least the size, because if you see that, it's a really thin book and a really small book as well, actually. So it's an easy read. It just really invites you right away to just give it a try, right? Because when it's about like feminist literature, at least I am really critical. Um, yeah, but this book was super good. It really opened up my mind, and I honestly really enjoyed this. Reading this. Um, I liked how she actually relates. Uh, she relates her observations to ancient like Greek mythology. So she always gives examples on how women are portrayed also in the past times and in past literature, and then she's actually relating it to nowadays, which is I thought a really smart move, because it's things that one never really pays attention to. It's just something existent. I mean, now that we are so sensitive, yeah, right, maybe we might observe this kind of stuff. But it was just nice to read it in this book too. And then in that kind of book, she says multiple kind of things. She says, for instance, that in Greek mythology, like the women are usually never really the ones who talk, you know, so it's like the guys who do the big talk and the discourse. That's the word, the official word too. And once a woman opens her mouth and she talks, it's like just not doesn't have the same kind of weight, her arguments. So she gives, for instance, yeah, yeah. So my actual like microphone works now. Thank you very much for hinting that out to me. I didn't realize before, so that's cool. Yeah. So actually, in that book, she mentions that as well. And she says, for instance, that scenario when they're sitting on the table and they have a meeting, and then, like, maybe as a woman, someone would make like a kind of like, would mention an idea, and then there's like silence, awkward silence, and then like one guy would go like okay, and just to continue the meeting, blah blah, and then they would just brush over it as such. um I think she definitely has a point there. So when she wrote this in here, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that true. Like, it can happen like this. Like, it's not that I never experienced that at all either, right? And then eventually maybe we just find ways to coping with it without taking it personal, because once you take it personal, then you're even more at disadvantage, right? So yeah, in this book she mentions really clearly how, as a woman, actually, to be taken seriously, you gotta almost have masculine character traits. So also a technique to be taken more serious is to lower your voice, or to dress in a suit or something like that, for instance. And then you're taken much more seriously too. Like, for instance, she's going into politics too. She's mentioning Merkel, for instance, as an example, like the German minister. Yeah, everyone knows her. Merkel is like hardcore woman, but somehow there's not much femininity left on her. And then she says in this book, like, there can't be, like, we must find a way that we can leave these feminine traits and still treat them with respect and equal. So that thought that she mentioned in this book here, I thought this was really interesting, and she definitely also has a valid point. Everyone who's a little bit open-minded will be able to agree with her. And yeah, and then there, of course, there's always people who deny this kind of stuff, but people who have some realistic kind of realistic ways of looking at things, yeah, I think she has a point, and I don't think it's good, to be honest, as well. So I enjoyed this book, and actually I ended up making some work about it as well. So what I did was, like, I did some really like feminine kind of, pictures of myself, so self-portraits, and then I showed this to the class. Everyone thought it was interesting, but it's just always awkward for some reason. It's always awkward. Yeah, I don't know. I ended up doing something different, but then also quarantine kind of interfered with my original ideas anyways. But yeah, yeah, I think, like, when it's about feminist literature and things like that, it's just too much of a topic. And the most annoying thing about it is that even feminists argue with one another about the right way of being a feminist and things like that. So, to be honest, I agree. I agree with that too. I feel like we should just have some respect in general. Yeah, like, yeah, in general. Let's not go any further than that. But anyways, that book, interesting, really nice read. Took me 2 days to read it. That's, I honestly think, the fastest I ever read a book. It goes really quick, and she writes really coherent and puts some images in there too. And yeah, as said, she always relates it to politics and also to yeah. So there she goes. She talks about the suits, right, in this like masculine way of, yeah, portraying yourself. But those women are still, I think, not masculine at all. They're still like women, right? But just, yeah, we have so after all role, like, we have specific like ideas on how a woman should be and how a man should be, right? And she really points that out in the book, just to show you guys some more of this. Yeah, and then also the one thing, and that was the inspiration for her book cover, um, was like Medusa in the Greek mythology, for instance, was a woman who's been actually raped, and then she was actually made into this like monster with snakes around her head who killed every man. Because she was really sad about it, obviously. So her heart was broken, and then she turned into that, right? But she was actually the victim, you know? And then somehow they turned her into the monster of the story. But that was actually, yeah, that was actually the story. And that was the inspiration for her book cover. So actually, this is a part of the Medusa painting. And then there's also Hillary Clinton and Angela Merkel always been compared with Medusa too. So she mentioned that in her book as well. And she says that, for instance, Trump would get away with different kind of behaviors, but once someone like that does it, they don't really get it away in the same way. But I mean, yeah, as said, like also there's memes about Trump and stuff, right? So I think there's always more sides to the story. So this is then Trump, and then this is Clinton, I think. But yeah, you know, there's always more sides to the story. But yeah, I can definitely agree with her that. I mean, there's just also something I feel like we should be proud to be women, and somehow, and I guess that's how you get taught after all. Still, if you're a woman, you kind of, you know, especially these days, you cannot get away with everything, you know. There's lots of pressure and responsibility on women too these days. And for some reason, like especially these days, women, they kind of want to prove that they're independent, right? And self-sufficient. And then, yeah, we kind of sometimes the charm is lost, this femininity, you know, this playfulness and stuff like that. And that's cool as well because you want to be independent, but and there I agree with her message in the book. I think there we should have just an a more open mind to just see that playfulness also as something valid and serious, right? So it must be able we must be able to be playful and fun and still be successful. And somehow there's like, yeah, this somehow like playfulness is always deemed to be somewhat less serious, right? You guys can tell me if you disagree. Please don't dislike my videos all the time if you don't if you disagree, because that way I never really understand in which points you don't agree with, and that's how I don't really learn nothing. Like I have someone or various people then just disagree with some things I say, and then they just give me a dislike. I don't even know what kind of person would that was and why they would do it, and that's how I also honestly don't really learn nothing from that, right? So I appreciate much more if you just take a moment and actually write down in the comments about what parts you guys disagree with, and then you know that's how the conversation is open and it's not just, you know, an anonymous kind of weird like dislike somewhere. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Let me read your comments. Yeah, wow, I really like your words. Yeah. Oh, not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. Yeah, and I think that is definitely also. I think, yeah, because in this book, for instance, speech is a really big topic throughout this book. So she says the way how men and women talk is just fundamentally quite different. So guys really discourse, right? They really talk, and women, when they talk, it's just because they are maybe just really like more in the background from history, and then their points are just not valid, right? Yeah, well, she mentions this, but I really like how you say that. I think that because I watched some documentaries and stuff on that too, and a feminine trait, for instance, then is this like problem solving kind of thing, because she's the one who actually kind of organizes the family and the household. That also Mary Beard writes that in her book, and she has this like uh, humble way of like weighting arguments, positive and negative, I guess. But yeah, hey, it's a difficult topic to talk about, and for me, to be honest, like, I guess I don't like to really talk about it personally because it makes me feel really vulnerable anyways. Like, I guess I would be also, I have to be careful not to be one of those people who says, it's no problem, right? We can deal with that. Like, but then if you do that, that's kind of how things never really change. So you kind of have to admit that there is an issue. And yes, I have to give her that point. There is points in here where she's absolutely right. And it's really hard to actually do that because once you do that, you also kind of admit your own flaws or how the system is full of flaws too. And yeah, it's a really, yeah. Well, when I finished the book, I remember I was like, fuck. Yeah, I was really like that. So this is the inspiration for the book cover. You see, so there's Medusa, and then there's this like pattern, and this is the pattern she uses here as well. So I like that. Yeah, and that's the woman, Mary Beard. She looks like a really kind woman, no? And then she also tells about her own story as well towards the end. But the whole book, she keeps it really like, you know, analytical. And then in the end, she relates it to her own experience. And that is really a smart move, to be honest. Yeah, man, this is the big topics no one likes to talk about. But, you know, it's like once you put emotion into it, it becomes a fiction, or it becomes a biography or something like that. It's not truth anymore. That's why you have to keep these things really analytical, even though it's really close to your heart and you're actually experiencing it on yourself, right? So I guess that's something super difficult to learn, as especially for women, because they're really like feelers. I guess most women, they're really feelers. So you gotta learn a way of talking so people take you seriously. And that's especially the issue also of like, you know, recent kind of happenings, like for instance the Me Too, right? There's so many women that get sent away from police stations when they experience some highly traumatic things that happen to them. And they just get brushed off because, yeah, no evidence, right? So the system honestly really supports this kind of explosive uh, behaviors rather than this like humbleness and like, yeah, openness. But maybe I'm going too far now, but I guess it's also really like a personal topic of mine. So I was really glad that I read this book, to be honest. If you guys have any recommendations, let me know as well. This is one of those books where you just read it and you're like through, and then you're like, I don't know what to do about it, though, right? You have other books, like for instance the biography of Charles Check, which I introduced to you guys the other day, where you read his story and it just feel really good while you read it, because it's funny, and then you actually learn from his experience too. And this is some book that you just read and you feel actually not good after reading it, because you know it's true, but you don't really know what to do about it, and it makes you feel so helpless and vulnerable, and it's just shit, right? But after all, I recommend reading it because it opens up and it feeds arguments, and yeah, you learn about yourself, because like when you grow up as a woman, you don't understand, you just, like all the other people, you just play with the kids in the kindergarten, right? Doesn't matter if you're woman or if you're guy or whatever. And then you only get these things taught once you kind of enter some high school, then when it slowly starts, and then eventually in your teenage years or with your first job, that's when you realized, oh, this is different, right? Because like I'm a strange one. I told you I'm working also in construction. I did that on a casual basis and just a few weeks, but there I realized it as well. Like I need to be that nice guy or either really bitter and mean girl, right? And then I'm the nice one, I'm not taken seriously. And if I'm the really bitter and mean one, then you're like considered to be like a bitch, right? It's like someone said that really nicely to me, like another woman said that really nicely to me. She said, you're either the bimbo or you're the bitch. You can just decide if you want to be the bitch or you want to be the bimbo, you know? But yeah, there's like really nothing good. Like you cannot go any good way. But then also, as I say, like it's not only like a woman's issue. There's also some men who facing that, and then there's men who actually then maybe enroll in some courses on how to learn charismatic kind of moves or something like that. So I spoke with some guys as well. So yeah, we are already changing. That's why I don't want to generalize it, but I guess I can just really relate to what she's writing. All right, let me check the comments again. True humbleness is a really good trait. The desire for competition is removed and collaboration is all that remains. Oh, that is such a nice way of putting it. Yeah, I really agree. I really like that. But it's not, it's quite rare. You need to have a certain level of like resistance after all. Otherwise, you risk to not be taken serious. Yeah, it's true. I'm just doing what I'm doing anyways. But yeah, I guess that is just really something. Yeah, this book, I think this is the worst book review of all of my book reviews that I did, because like usually I can tell you guys like quite clearly, I like this, I don't like this. But for this one, I can't because there's something in this book that resonates with me, which feels really painful, and at the same time it really fascinates me, like the way how she takes the courage to actually write that down, right? So that is something like, it's like killing you softly, actually, not with this song but with this book. Like, it's like, it's a good one, but it's also not good. Like, it feels really bad, like, because no escape from the truth in a way. And you can either just put it aside and say, this is absolute shit, you know? I think that could be also a reaction. Or you could be like, yeah, good. Or you could be like, oh, fuck, I don't know how to feel about this. And I guess that is really what happened to me when I was reading this book. But this is a book that really evokes emotion. This is a really, really contemporary critical kind of piece of literature. It really is. Yeah. Well, so but what did you want to know exactly? Matthew's just writing in the chat, tell us more then. Don't be afraid to offend people with your true feelings. Yeah. Tell me exactly what you want to know, because I have some difficulty to just shoot away, because it's like something you can't really recall anymore, right? That's why usually you wanna let things sit and not react out of the right like emotion. Yeah. But yeah, I read this book a couple of months ago in February, and that still really evokes a lot of emotion, this book. And I think it always will. Like, some people feel this maybe with the Black Lives Matter, right? And I can feel it with this book, because I guess I really have wound myself. So yeah, that's how it resonates a lot with me. And that's interesting, right? You want to learn from people that look at this in a more neutral way, for instance. They can teach you about this. Yeah. You want to talk to people who agree with that highly. You want to kind of just keep a discussion going. Okay, I will tell more, yeah, sure. But I think I was quite done with this, to be honest. I was quite done with this. I think this would be a good book that you talk with people who actually read it, because this is the kind of book you want to refer to. It's the kind of book where you want to refer to like specific parts of the book, and then you want to, yeah, for instance, if you're a teacher, you want to have your students write an essay about parts of this book. That's the kind of stuff you want to do with this book. It's a really academic kind of piece. It's like a research piece. It's like actually an essay. Because it's so thin, I'm sure it's actually started off to be first an essay. Maybe that's what she even wrote in the beginning. I don't remember anymore. Yeah. But yeah, that's good. It's a good one. And then another one that I can talk about that I also read really quick was Communication. I wrote down, nice book, easy read, not life-changing but inspiring. So what I remember from this book, Communication by Gil Hassan, is that it's like, I think what I thought while I was reading it was, this is common sense, right? Most of the things in here, people know that. But it was nice to read it after all, because it made me personally more conscious about what kind of is already, what everyone kind of carries within us already. And I read this book in 8 days. I read this really quick too, because it reads really easy. So he talks, I'm just gonna tell you guys the chapters and then you kind of get an idea again on what it is about. So it says, Part 1, communicate, understanding communication and miscommunication, knowing what to say and how to say it, putting it in writing, being a better listener, reading between the lines. Part 2, connect, making friends, supporting others, winning people over with persuasion. And then about the author and the index and stuff. So that really is a nice way to kind of build this book up. So the one thing of this book that I took out of it the most was like the listening part. He has something that's called active listening, and that's really cool. That's something like once someone possesses the skill to active listen, you feel really comfortable around this person. Maybe that's a skill that I actually possess, and that's maybe also how people tell me their stories and I'm able to capture them in my photographs because they feel comfortable and I would ask those questions. And specifically the active listening part is like you listen, but you also implement what the other person has said to you in your next question. So if someone tells you, yeah, I like today because the sky's blue, you just not only saying, that's cool, I like it as well when the sky is blue. You would actually, if you have the skill of active listening, you would say, um, so you like the sunny days or something. You would kind of implement some like further, thought into it. And then this person would be like, yeah, I actually like summer better than winter. And that's how the conversation kind of rolls on and on and on. But that's a really like superficial topic to talk about the weather basically. But if you use deep topics like, history, personal history, that's when things can become really interesting. And that's also like because the people will then automatically kind of like you because they find out about themselves and they're able to talk about themselves too. And like everyone actually likes to talk about themselves if we are being really honest. He doesn't write that in his book, I think, but or was it a woman who wrote that? I don't remember anymore. I think it was a woman. I don't even remember anymore. But yeah, so I did. Then the cool thing is when you read a book, then after you start to notice things and you start to talk with people about it anyways, if you want or not, because you kind of implement what you read into your real life. Okay, let me check. And sign language. She talks about also sign language. That's super interesting. But I think we are really quite aware those days of communication. It's the root of all our interactions these days. Because we kind of all become those like entrepreneur thinkers, right? And in order to do this kind of collaborations that you mentioned, for instance, Matthew, before, in order to do that collaborations, you need to have a skill of communication. Otherwise, people are not quite aware what you want from them and how they could help you. So maybe in the past, you had like a person who tells you what you have to do exactly and you would just execute this. But now communication is such an important thing, like even in a way how they change the school systems these days. Like also that older uh, older students teach younger students and things like this. Being vulnerable even a little bit. Really, you think these days people feel more scared of being vulnerable when you compare it to the past? I'm wondering about this actually. Because we have it all over the internet. Everyone's always here on Instagram. It's like these like huge things like depression and post-traumatic stress syndrome and those kind of things are like so dominantly like talked about these days. So I feel like lots of people actually talk about this really openly in in some way. I don't know what do you think about this? Yeah, and then it always has different parts. So it has like summaries and top tip and stuff. Give examples. If you put forward an idea, try and follow it up with an example. Hmm? And then also like how it's different or how it's helping you to write down things sometimes. Active listening. There are many situations where being a better listener can help you to be better connect to others. The way to become an effective listener is to learn and practice active listening. It's called active listening because you are active in the process of listening. You don't just hear what's being said, you do something. You put some effort into acknowledging and understanding the other person's perspective and what they mean. Active listening starts with reflective listening. Reflective listening involves repeating, paraphrasing, and summarizing. So that part of the book is the most interesting, I thought. When you're repeating, you're simply saying exactly what the other person has just said. For example, yes, it is nice here. I agree, it would be a shame to have to leave. Yeah. To make sure to show that you heard it correctly. Like on the phone, you just confirming that you listened and understood. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he's really taking a lot of time to make sure that his point is coming across. So basically, we as readers already understood it from the first, but then he actually paraphrases it once and twice again, actually, here just now. So he actually implements what he's saying too. Repetition makes us remember things. And that, yeah, this is a super interesting book as well. He really pins it down. This is someone who really, I feel like someone who stood down, who sat down and wrote all the key points and then honestly re-reflected on the actual like definition of it and the art of communication. And he put all this effort into actually pinning it down and outlining it for us so we can read it again and we can be like, oh, that's cool, I like this technique. And you actually start to do it as well by just reading this and then acknowledging that this makes sense. It's also a nice book you can actually refer to. I've realized. Yeah, it would be nice book to build a course on, you know. And I'm sure this guy did probably do some classes or like TED Talks or something on the matter. He's also a best-selling author of Mindfulness and Emotional Intelligence. Emotional intelligence is another thing that makes us connect. I also read a book on that, but this book is still at my parents' place. And emotional intelligence is just, you have the IQ, like your brain capacity, and then you have an EQ, emotional intelligence, which defines how well you interact with others. So actually, the way how smart you are is not only defined by your IQ, is also defined by your EQ, how well you work and collaborate together with others, how you can put yourself into the shoes of others, and things like that. And now, if you guys are up for one more book, I'm happy to do one more book actually. That I finished too. I'm showing you only the books that I like so far. Um, Besides that book from of Bryson that I introduced you guys the other day, I didn't like that book, or I don't like it so far, that book. But actually, hardly happens that I don't like a book. Like, I always find some part of a book that I actually like. And I think if someone puts the efforts into actually writing this all down, it's already really nice. It takes a lot of time. And yeah, uh, because if someone writes down stuff, they thought about something too over and over again. So eventually they maybe just put it down into written word, you know, in in order to be able to let it go or something and to build up on this, I guess. Well, that's just a theory of mine, but that's how I work with my works, my photographs, and whatever, my blog posts and things like that. Let me just check the comments real quick. Most people are acting just for attention. Yes, I think I agree with that. I think lots of people actually kind of switch into that entertainer role because we kind of get some gratification for being an entertainer. If we are mega extra funny, or if we are mega skilled, if we do mega cool stuff, or if we are even mega smart, we kind of get some gratification. So most people switch into an entertainer role. If you just come with like nothing but yourself, is like hardly not good enough, maybe sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. But I must say, it's funny, right? It's funny. I think it's funny as well to watch those people, but it's also boring. I mean, maybe after 3 or 4 of those series where someone's like just entertaining, it becomes really boring. And it especially becomes boring when you actually talk to this person and you meet them in real life and you just realize that they are not that funny, and that they are not that nice actually, because they are maybe just they have like an entertainer kind of side to them, which they bring out in those kind of videos, and then they have another side when they're with their friends or something like that. I feel like they must be also feeling kind of lonely. I like those people who are just really consistent, I like those nerd people, this nerd kind of characters who just really create stuff for the sake of themselves and not to please others. I really like those. And yeah, I'm trying to be like that as well. I really don't want to be that kind of entertainer. It's like I could like maybe in the past, but that's why I say like you can eventually maybe just let people down, and I don't want to be like that. I rather want to be consistent and just do my thing, and then have people contribute and open like a discussion rather than to just trying to constantly convince people that I'm so funny or so smart, or those kind of things. Like, also that the reason I'm creating those videos that I'm doing is for myself. I want to create an archive of like stuff, and I actually want to share it with the world. And I'm hoping by that to actually open a discussion. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm just trying to soak the creativity in and then give pieces that resonate with me and pass them on to others. If it really works and if you guys think it's interesting, that's not a question. Like, I said, there's always some person who gives me dislikes, and I never know why, which is such a so unfortunate, because if I would know why they give me those dislikes, I could actually improve the quality of the videos, right? But because I just don't even get any like feedback, that's how I just keep on doing what I'm doing, and I hope that eventually someone likes it, but I'm just doing it for myself after it. But yeah, um, the other book that I and we have some other comments too, is mostly shallow and not genuine. Yeah, the sensation is to get the views, is true. Yeah, and I feel like it also depends on what you focus. Sometimes I just focus then on the marketing strategy behind it. That is another thing that I think is interesting. So I also studied marketing fundamentals actually, and I think that's why I'm also focusing on, yeah, I'm trying to understand what resonates with the masses, because like marketing sometimes also kind of on a boundary to psychology. You want to know the desires and you want to know the wishes of your audience in order to successfully place a product, right? So if you go on Instagram, it's a really good marketing platform for sure, right? And then these things that are actually shallow, as you call them, they kind of resonate with a lot of people, because most people don't want to. Don't want to reflect too much. Like, they have their job, they are busy the whole day. They actually don't want to, watch a TED talk after work. Like, obviously there's people out there who do this kind of things, right? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that even from my own experience, sometimes I realize that sometimes you just start in the mood, and then it's nice to have something easy. And I guess that's why it really resonates with lots of people, because it's just, you don't need to think too much. And then I think you can use this towards your favor as well, right? There's nothing wrong with that either. It's just, I feel how we've always kind of been. I know social medias except YouTube, okay. Now, to be honest, I don't think you're cynical. I think you actually protect yourself and your time, because it's really hard to be on social medias and to, not get swallowed into it and lured into it. Sometimes I realize I spend a lot of time, just on social medias, and at the end, I put my phone aside and I'm not even sure what I actually watched. So if I would look at Instagram and those things as something that I want to get something, some insights out of, I don't necessarily think that's a smart idea to use it. Also depends what kind of accounts you follow, but I think the overall perception is that there's just a lot of influence coming in, and it's not really filtered, right? There's no like entry requirements to publish stuff. That's how you don't really see this like verified and mega smart stuff. As for instance, when you read a book, you read something that someone thought about like for at least a couple of months, you know. Most people who write a book, they actually research some of the topics their whole life. This is their life works, you know. And social media, everyone can publish stuff. So if you compare a social media post with a book, this probably your time spent better. If it's a topic that really interests you, here you get in social medias, you get some way more superficial stuff and way less verified kind of contributions. But yeah, the way how I started to look at it at some point was that I said to myself, this is your hobby. Like, you want to understand just the strategies behind it, and you want to understand what resonates with people, and you want to stay up to date with the trends and stuff like that. If you use it like that, Instagram and Facebook and whatever, there comes like a new layer to it. But there's a huge danger that you get soaked in, that for sure. But I like to do it. I like to hang out on Instagram and look a little bit at the posts. Sometimes I have my moments, sometimes I really like it, sometimes I don't. And obviously I also like to follow other artists and I like to look at their works, which is an amazing way to actually use Instagram. There's so many ways to actually use social medias, right? As well. So I guess you're not cynical at all. I think you just notice that is not worth your time, you know, or that there's nothing in there for you at the moment. I don't think that's cynical. I feel like it's also protective. Like, I know a lot of people who really limit their time of social media consumption to 30 minutes a day, for instance, just because they realize I'm really wasting lots of my time and I'm not really doing nothing at all. Like, I'm not gaining a lot of stuff out of it. And yeah, that is true. It's like a drug sometimes. It's really addictive. That's for sure. Mm. For me, I think I invest this time into it because eventually I saw it really as a platform to also interact with my, you know, audience. So for me, it has a different meaning again. Because I really want to see, you know, how you like my works and stuff like that. And therefore, social medias are quite cool. What else did you write? Yeah, I wondered as well. Why do I get those dislikes? I don't get it. Maybe it's those strange people who just don't like me in general and they just want to, you know, make a statement or something. Yeah. I yeah, I actually talked about it with other people too because I was like, man, why? Because I hardly give dislikes on YouTube at all. Like, if I'm doing it, it goes by accident because I'm listening to a song and I have to run to the bus or something, and then I realize sometimes when I'm in the bus, oh fuck, I pressed the dislike button by accident or something. I hardly give dislikes to videos, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should start to give dislikes too, but I didn't see any point in that either. Don't understand. Maybe you do that with someone that you don't like, but you don't want to tell them into their face that you don't like them. It doesn't matter anyways. I'm just saying, like, if someone of you guys doesn't like my videos and you actually want me to take into account your feedback, I'm happy to do that. I'm always open for feedback. If you write me a comment and tell me what you don't like about it, then I will definitely look at it. I'm quite responsive as that, anyways. Okay, so then, as said, I have one more or two more books if you guys are down for it. I would like to introduce you one more. This book here is written in German. I actually read this in German, and I bought it also um, in a German-speaking country. Um, it's a really good book. This is written by a neuroscientist, and she really researches on how we are all affected by others. And this book was such an eye opener for me too, because she really writes some true stuff in here too. She writes, for instance, that everyone always thinks that they are not influenced by the others, but honestly and really we are just always influenced by one another. Um, that was super interesting to read because she confirms that, and once you read it in her book, you realize that there's no way of being original as such. We are not. No one is really original. We are always affected. Like, we are affected by the way how we grew up. We are affected by the people in our surrounding. We are affected by our co-workers. We're affected by the people we like. We're affected by the people we don't like. We're affected by the times we grow up in. We are affected by everything. We are affected by so many things, and then us as such, we become a big sum of influences that form into a human being, right? So who are we then in the end? That's the other question that was risen by me when I read this book, you know. But just to be aware of the fact that you are influenced by it and to notice as well, that's what made this book really, really interesting to me. Is this all like common sense? But if you read it from a neuroscientist who actually proves it by experiments and by year-long research, suddenly it has more relevance and it kind of becomes real or something like that. Yeah, so sometimes you're just in it and you don't actually think about it, right? So I remember no, I remember she also goes into different parts of our brains, how they're responsible for stuff, how we have a filter. Man, this book was super interesting. I have read it quite a while ago though. And she says how our brain works, for instance. So it says workers have to wash their hands. People would actually not necessarily do it if they get ordered to do things. People don't. 62% of the workers are not washing their hands when they see that. Well, I don't remember anymore that she wrote that. Every year, only in the USA, 60,000 of people um, are are treated in the hospitals because of a relate. I'm translating this. Sorry, because of a disease which is related to not washing your hands, and could have been avoided, right? That she tells you how they should just rephrase it and how we react to different, we react to different things. Our brain just can't go any else because this is still the parts of our brain. Like, we just resonate with stuff, and the way how you phrase things matters a lot too. So this is actually also touches upon communication. Mm. Oh man, this book was super fucking interesting. I really liked it. Um, this is a book I would actually reread again. That's a thing that doesn't happen very often. Like, honestly, don't like to read books twice. But this is a really, 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 really interesting book. And I guess if I would read it again, I would I would look at different parts of the book again, because it's so multi-layered and so versified that actually there is just so much research in this book. Just super, 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 super cool. I wrote this book is a brilliant work um, by gathering versified information. One can. Oh, I just wrote that actually in there. What I just said. Honestly, this is amazing. I still have the same opinion. It says one can really see how much work she put into it, like how much research. Yeah, wow. So I can honestly really also recommend this book if you are interested in like human behaviors. But this book is really also um, about brain activity. Like this book is really focused on neuroscientific kind of behavior, how our brain works and how it is from the primitive kind of roots, like our first ways of being until it is now. So that's a good one, a really good one. I'm not gonna quote any further of that. It's quite a thick book, but if you're interested in this sort of thing, feel free to have a read and then we can continue to talk further about it again. And the last book, and hi to the new people in there, hi Golden Coin. The last one is this book. This book, honestly, I hardly remember what is written in this book, to be honest. I think there was a book that I feel like there was so many different layers to this book and not a really coherent kind of red thread. That's how it became really actually hard to remember the different points of this book. Plus it's really thin and there's so much different angles in this book. It's so hard to actually say, this book is about this. I can't recall anymore. But what I remember is that I wrote down a few pages. One thing that I thought was interesting, because look. So if you see what I wrote down here was like page 110, art as a mean to measure quality of our attention. Page 42 to page 57, meaning of shame. Page 102 and 103, wide, narrow attention. Right, so we have shame, attention, the meaning of art. Page 78, provocation. Page 65, sex and shame. Woman as a source of shame. Oh, that wasn't really interesting. Actually, that was kind of relating to that book a little bit on some points, because read this book as well, actually, because that was the really interesting part of this book. Like, I guess page 109, knowing what a distraction is. Page 90 to 91, attention and respect. Page 50, page 85, internal and external world. Page 83, freedom and change, shift of attention. See, too many topics in this book. But one thing that was really super interesting was this shame, and I think that was quite a large part of this book. The meaning of shame, what it means, and how we actually feel it. And the interesting part about it was historical considerations rather than contemporary self-help trends. Yeah, but I read those as well. I read those, a few self-help books too, but I think it's more interesting if it's actually deep layered and it goes into science too. That's when I actually really like it, because otherwise it's just like do this, and you have a good life. But it's like, yeah, I really like when there's some research or evidence behind as well. But thank you for your compliment. But anyways, in this book, that guy also had like, he was somehow like a little bit of a philosophy, like his approach was a little bit of philosopher approach. So kind of like a poet who's kind of reflecting on how things could be like that, rather than like an actual scientist, like her, for instance. And him, that thing about shame was so interesting because he actually said that we feel shame and embarrassment for things that we would actually like to do. So if we feel embarrassed for someone, it's because we actually kind of don't dare to do the same sort of thing. And that's what resonates with us. I thought it was an interesting point, but there's no proof whatsoever that this is really true. Like, I kind of started to pay attention to those sort of moments, and I couldn't agree with him anymore. I thought the point that he made in his book was interesting, but once I actually tried to apply it into my real life, I was like, I'm not sure if that is really the case. Like, I like how you thought about it, but I'm not so sure if that is. It's like more like a theory rather than an actual reality. While with her, this is real. There is evidence. She did this experiments and things with like I think with mice too and stuff like that. And there is evidence. There is based on reality, this book, while this one is more like a philosopher's kind of work. Like, it stimulates us to think further, right? But this book, honestly, like, is a good read. He has some interesting points in there, but as I said in the beginning when I started to talk about this book, I can hardly remember anymore. It's not a really, for me at least, that was not a really relevant work where I was like, oh yeah, that is good. I'm going to refer to this book and I'm going to recommend it to a lot of people because I really like this book. This book was just an interesting read, but not like, it didn't fascinate me. And as I said, like, there was too many different topics in this book. Like, I couldn't quite, he didn't, it's like maybe too much of a poet because he didn't have the ability to guide us through smoothly. Yeah. All right. So that's the last book, actually. Now I actually introduced you all the books that I had on my list so far. I have to read some more books now, actually. Again, that went much quicker than I thought. But this was like a little few book reviews of books that I enjoyed. And I hope that you guys enjoyed it too. If you have any questions, recommendations, or if you would actually like to talk about a book or some of your works that you did and would like to share some, inspiration and creativity, feel free, please, to contact me as well. You can either do that by comments or through my website, actually, as well. My website's always under almost all of my videos. And yeah, then I actually just want to thank you guys for your time. And yeah, I hope to see you guys soon again. Okay, then until then, goodbye and have a really good day. See you.